new location.
Yeah.
Okay. A little intro.
Yep. Welcome back, everyone, to the Wednesday Workout WOD. I'm joined, as always, by the very handsome, jacked, strong, intelligent, gifted Zach Colangelo.
Thanks, Mike.
Zach, how are we doing today?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well, thanks. And what are we talking about?
We are talking about those who are not or are in a calorie deficit, but they're not losing weight.
Yeah, so
with the goal.
With the goal. So are you in a calorie deficit and not losing weight? Here's why, and we will go into that.
Yes. You are currently in the process of losing some fat mass. You want to start it off by telling us a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm currently in prep for a bodybuilding show, drug tested April 20th.
Cool.
So the goal, utilizing DEXA, scans, visuals, and mirror, whatnot, trying to take my body to as low of a body fat percentage as possible, while retaining as much lean tissue as possible, while trying to amplify weaknesses that I had in the last show to less of a weakness to create a better overall look in the way that bodybuilder ascribes look.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's a few of us that are trying to lose weight, whether that just be personal goal or trying to get ready for the summer and having your shirt off a little bit more. Myself, Coach Jimmy, anyone else?
Yeah, Coach Alex. Andy is currently cutting some.
All right.
Half of this gym to probably, I would say 90% of the gym is cutting.
Yeah.
Probably half are kind of going through the principles and doing it, which is super awesome. So if you're currently on a fat loss journey, stay consistent. You got this. We will talk a little bit about energy balance, but we're also going to talk about how to increase the likelihood that you will be successful, that you will get to where you want to get to. Yeah.
So how would you approach a client, friend, family member who comes to you, Mike, I'm not losing weight, I know I'm in a calorie deficit. What is your approach to that?
Great question. So the wrong answer, which is oftentimes seen in the fitness sphere, is you tell them, well, you're not in a calorie deficit.
Yes.
So I do not recommend that approach, because all of a sudden you're bridging a gap between you and the prospective client or the individual. There's less rapport, trust, and you're just probably going to make them feel pretty sad. Mm-hmm. So instead, what I'll oftentimes analyze, because fat loss is very hard. We know that 5%, based on the literature, like 5-10% of people that aim for fat loss are actually successful at doing it and keeping it off. Mm-hmm. So this is a common goal that many people in America have had and around the world, and it will continue to be a goal that will be addressed in multiple ways. Mm-hmm. So I recommend starting off with empathy, acknowledging their feelings, using pronouns that put the emphasis on them, such as you must be frustrated, this is really hard, etc. But guess what? It doesn't end there. We have the answers for you. So one of the reasons why you may be in a calorie deficit, maybe you are, and you're not losing weight, and a calorie deficit is just defined as expending more calories than you're taking in.
Correct.
So you have your basal metabolic rate, which you have very little control over. Mm-hmm. You have your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is your movement that you do throughout the day without thinking. That burns the next largest subset, most likely, of calories.
Fidgeting.
Yeah, fidgeting, maybe like getting off the couch, go to the toilet.
Yes.
The further you get into fat loss, you'll probably notice that NEAT drops down. The wife may say, hey, can you grab the remote? And you may say, let's just look at the blank screen today, babe. Like, that's how you know that your NEAT's going down. If you make that comment, you just you drop into the lazy boy, you just don't want to move for 2 hours. Yeah. So these are kind of items to be aware of. You have exercise. Mm-hmm. So exercise would be any type of form of resistance training, movement that is intentional. You could even arguably put steps into that. Some people try to bracket steps in the NEAT, but I think when you're tracking steps, that is rather intentional, so I don't count that really as NEAT. I find that as a way to combat the lack of NEAT as you go through fat loss.
The steps themselves are neat, but when you go out of your way and plan to
Then you plan to do them.
plan to do that, I mean,
Yeah.
plan to reach a certain number, it then becomes exercise.
And there's an intentionality there, and we'll get into that. And then there's also going to be the thermic effect of food. So some macros are going to require more energy to utilize, such as protein. Protein's incredibly hard to store as fat. It has a thermic effect of about 30%. So a lot of the protein that you ingest actually, it's very inefficient from a tissue acquisition or fat adipose acquisition standpoint,
Okay.
which is nice, it's helpful. Carbs have about a 10% thermic effect, and then fat is a 3% thermic effect. Now you still want to eat fat in your diet for hormonal function, absorbing fat-soluble vitamins, overall cellular health. If you drop your fat to below 0.3 grams per pound of body weight, you'll probably feel really poor over time, and that may not be optimal for your health either. So all the macros are important. So yeah, today I think one of the reasons why you may actually be in a calorie deficit and haven't lost weight is it just hasn't been long enough. And I think that's really important to note. The first stage of starting a fat loss diet is inspiration. One day you wake up and maybe you just had a wild weekend and you ate a ton of food and it's Monday and you say to yourself, you look in the mirror and you wonder, I need to lose weight. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to diet. I'm going to exercise. Now that's great. Now your inspiration is going to be very high, and that's going to really help adherence for Monday. But guess what? Inspiration only lasts about 24 hours, and Renaissance Periodization does an incredible job. I highly recommend watching. It's a Dr. Mike Israel video talking about how to kind of go through the psychological steps for sustainable fat loss. I think this is actually even more important than the simplicity of fat loss, which everyone knows of thermodynamics for the most part, calories in, calories out. So we'll definitely maybe post a link to that video, and we'll kind of cover some of the topics less elegantly than him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the first step, is that inspiration. Now the problem with inspiration, again, is it only lasts about 24 hours, and then Tuesday comes along and it's Taco Tuesday, and guess what? Your inspiration's not there, but Taco Tuesday's there. You're no longer in fat loss.
Yeah.
So you have to give it a couple days. Your weight could trend up even if you're in a deficit due to fluid levels, as well as mass from food that's in your GI tract. So Dr. Lane Norton recently said in a video, he's right, if you eat a half pound of broccoli at night, the next morning, that's a half pound of mass that's in your body. That's not a half pound of fat. That's a half pound of mass that's sitting in your GI tract. So that temporary fluctuation, you could go up even eating uber healthy foods because maybe higher volume. Let's say you're starting fat loss and you want to make the healthy food, nutrient dense food taste really good, and you add a ton of salt, which I actually recommend in some cases, depending on how much salt. It's good to make your food taste good. You might see a spike up. If you just started a hard exercise program compared to what you're doing relatively before, you're going to see some fluid retention. So something that's funny for me during my preps is right now I'm eating 2,100 calories per day, on average 18 to 2,200. So pretty low. I'm at the end of a prep. We're pushing it. I could have a 2-hour leg workout. I might do 10,000 steps in the day and consume 2,000 calories, and then the next morning my weight just went up 1.5 pounds. Now, because I know why this occurred, I laugh, but oftentimes that creates frustration. And there's a neat study that was published in 2007 that found that frustration due to daily fluctuation is one of the largest deterrents for people's long-term fat loss journeys.
Okay.
So emotion rides into seeing the scale not drop immediately in a linear format due to fluid retention, higher mass of food because you're eating more maybe voluminous food such as vegetables, and that can deter people, and then Taco Tuesday comes and then it's just F it.
Now, do you think that the weight fluctuation is solely due to the increase in exercise, or is it a combination of maybe you ate a little bit later the night before, so that food is in your stomach and in your GI tract, or are you pretty religious when it comes to I usually eat dinner around you guys are a late dinner people, right?
Yeah, pretty late dinner because I find it helps me sleep really well,
Okay.
especially deep in the fat loss. And that's a very important principle for fat loss, and that kind of ties into the principle of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your inspiration, that's the spark that gets you started. Then you have motivation. Motivation is defining where you're going, right? So you wake up, you say, I want to lose a bunch of fat. Motivation is, I want to lose 20 pounds. And then, yeah, it's your goal. And then from there, you create intention, and intention is the steps or the plan that you create to get there. So intention actually and discipline, they kind of tie together. And that would be, I'm going to eat at these times throughout the day. I'm going to make my meals for 3-day sprints, so I don't have to really think about it. I just go into the Tupperware, grab the food out of the fridge, and eat it. That increases likelihood of success because then there's less of an emotional component in the moment. You're ahead of the game. Yeah, so I try to set things up where I'm eating around the same time. The body kind of knows when to expect food. It's kind of a behavioral pattern that I just follow.
Do you find it, because there's a phrase like clockwork, so do you know, like, all right, around 10 a.m. I started getting pretty hungry for breakfast, around 8 p.m. I'm getting pretty hungry for dinner?
Yeah.
Has your body gotten used to that?
Yeah, and I never get very hungry.
Okay.
Which is kind of neat because I'm eating very satiety or satiating foods that I found that really fill me up. But yeah, I probably am a bit hungrier at nighttime.
Okay.
Part of that has to do with during the day, working a lot, busy. Being busy is one of the best ways to stick to a fat loss plan, as long as you pre-program your meals and you're not living through the McDonald's drive-thru to get your nutrients in. You can do it that way. I've done it, but it's a little bit harder.
A little more challenging.
Yeah, a little bit more challenging. Yeah, so typically I'll eat when I wake up, which is around 6:30 a.m.
Okay.
And then I'll train typically around 8:30 a.m.-ish, or depending on the day if I have meetings, coaching. And then I'll probably eat my next meal at around 10 a.m., probably another one at 2 p.m., another one at 5 or 6, depending. And then my last meal I'll usually eat at like 9:30 p.m. while I'm programming.
Okay.
And then I fall asleep and I do it again. And I usually eat around the same type of food items at each meal too.
Cool. So a bunch of little kind of mini meals to spread throughout the day to let your calories last.
Yeah, to let them last, where I'm not overspending, but I'm spending enough to suppress the appetite at certain times. And if like the middle of the day I'm busy, I'm not as hungry, I might go more protein biased in those meals because I can get the protein down quickly, help increase muscle protein synthesis, and that's mixed with being busy is the fuel I need to continue on.
Cool. And you mentioned a little bit earlier that you're consuming about 2,100 calories a day.
Yeah, that's probably what I average.
So it's funny because a lot of people say like you need to be in a deficit to lose weight, but that deficit, it might be 500 calories for both of us, that deficit, but our bodies aren't going to react to that 500 calories the same. Because personally, like you're 220 pounds right now?
I'm actually down. Okay. So I hit my, with fluctuation, my weekly average this last week, and I recommend go by weekly averages and before you make changes. If you react to the day today, you're going to get frustrated. It's going to be hard to build continuity. It's a little bit less scientific methody, and you lose the locus of control. So my weekly average for this past week was about 210.
Okay. So
and then I'm expecting the next weekly average to probably be about 207, 208. So if it's 207, that would make me think that I'm about in a 1,500 calorie deficit per day.
Cool.
If it's 208, that means I was in about 1,000 calorie deficit.
Okay, so going back to my point here is that Mike is 210 pounds, eating about, on average, 2,100 calories a day. I'm also currently losing weight. I've gone from 198 to about, my weekly average last week was 184, and I'm at 2,500 calories.
Yeah.
So then, why would you believe, or how would you explain that to somebody is like, Mike has substantially more muscle than Zach. A substantial amount, about 30 more pounds of body weight on him as well. Why am I able to lose weight still at a higher calorie count than you would?
Yeah. So how much weight did you lose on the weekly average from week to week?
The first couple weeks it was a lot of water, so
Yeah.
it was probably, I think I went from 198 to 194 after the first 10 to 14 days.
Makes sense.
Then after that it was like 2 pounds a week, and then since maybe March 1st it's been like a pound a week.
A pound, and a pound a week is great. That means you're burning 500 more calories than you're intaking about.
Mhm.
So that's pretty cool. So it's going to slow down with time. Part of that is NEAT going down, but part of it is I'm still burning at a very quick rate.
Yes.
Like the difference between losing 2 pounds per week when you're far into fat loss and you got past the reduction in food volume, you got past the reduction in water, the immediate water loss, you start to get a little bit flat. Then it starts to become a little bit more predictable, and you can really line it up with the calories pretty well.
Cool.
So for me, if I'm doing 2,100 calories, I'm losing 3 pounds per week or just about. That means my maintenance with my current everything that's going on is about 3,600.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, whereas for you, if you're doing 2,500 calories, you're losing a pound a week with everything going on, your maintenance is actually 3,000. So my maintenance is still higher than his. That extra pound or two drop weekly average, because we're both pretty far in the fat loss, that's substantial.
Cool. Awesome. Now, we talked a little bit about ourselves and what we're doing, and some tips like higher volume foods. I don't think we mentioned, but fiber is a big component. Liquid, so maybe carbonated drinks. I don't think we mentioned that could help. Why? I guess the next thing would be, all right, this person, say you're working with somebody, and they say they're in their calorie deficit. What other components? I guess you can see where I'm going here with this in terms of psychologically, or the chemical imbalance with like satiety and hunger hormones. How would you go about that, and how would you explain those, I guess you could say, variables or aspects of the fat loss process or progress?
Yeah. So the hormone component is a fun one, because oftentimes people will blame their hormones. It's easy to blame outside variables, and they're right. They're actually right. So when you're dieting for a while, or maybe you get more stressed and then you don't sleep as well, that's a major component within this. Your ghrelin tends to increase. Now, ghrelin is the hormone that makes you feel a bit more hungry, and then leptin is the hormone that suppresses appetite. So if you look at people that are chronically obese, that are carrying a lot of excess adipose, it's easy for the fitness sphere to blame them and say you're just not disciplined, and that is a very lazy way of thinking. The truth is, you don't know what their past history looks like. You don't know the mental scars that maybe they have. You don't know, on a more physiological standpoint, what their hunger hormones are like. You don't know what their job is like. You don't know what their life is like. You don't know them. So by understanding that those hormones play a large role in behavior, that allows you to build empathy, and then to try to create structures that fall into the principle of intent that make it easier for them to get to the stage of discipline, habit, and then maybe one day, after 6 months to a couple of years, passion. And that's why you'll see sometimes people in the fitness sphere that are always jacked, that seem like they're suffering all the time, but the reality is they've just done it for so long that it turned into something they loved. And it's okay if that never happens for you. It doesn't happen for a lot of people. The fitness sphere will oftentimes say you have to be passionate, but that's just like saying you have to be a billionaire. Like, you can say those words, but the implications don't really mean anything in line with reality.
I could attest to the ghrelin hormone and that component, because I feel when I have a drastically lower amount of sleep, And maybe sometimes it's one day, maybe it's multiple days in a row. I wake up, I'm tired, I tend to be a little bit lazier, I don't want to work out, so then I still have to eat. And when you mentioned being busy, keeping yourself busy will make that kind of suppress the appetite because you're not really thinking about food. So when I'm lack of sleep, I become lazy. I don't want to work out either at all or as hard, or with any intent and like in detail. I still need to eat, so then I'm gonna eat. And if I'm lazy with everything else in the day, maybe I'm lazy with the diet plan or my typical foods, or I'll go and through that McDonald's drive-through. So I can attest to that factor of the kind of the hormone imbalance, or how you want to say it.
And you nailed it. So what you just said is discipline.
Yeah.
So what Zach does a great job at, and you can apply this, is there's going to be potential roadblocks or obstacles, and that's what we do with part of our nutrition curriculum here when we do our nutrition coaching, is identify those roadblocks. The more potential roadblocks or challenges that you can identify, the more you're going to be aware when those happen, and then it makes it much easier to navigate by tying it to motivation. So Zach knows that if he doesn't sleep well, and he probably knows which nights of the week are harder for him to sleep, it allows him to get ahead of the game and to stick to his intentional plan within that moment to maybe a higher degree of success.
And that day is definitely Friday, because work a little bit later at the gym, so I get home a little bit later. So then everything's kind of pushed back, dinner, just like breaking down the day and talking to my wife and family. And so everything's kind of pushed back a couple hours than it typically is. And then Friday I have a 6 a.m. client, so I have to wake up 5 o'clock, 5:15. And so I probably get an hour and a half to 2 hours less sleep. And then it's Friday, so then you're up later. So then there's more time in the day, so then there's more time to consume more food. So then sometimes Saturday I wake up a little bit heavier than I would. But then again, it goes back to finding the average of your week. So you may weigh yourself every single day, but then divide it by 7, find the average, and then you can track your progress by that. I found that it makes it much easier to kind of stay disciplined and that keep that motivation high, is because Saturday was 2 pounds heavier, but look at the previous 5 days, and then the average will average out, and you'll see that kind of whichever way you're going, increase or decrease that body weight. So
Zach nailed it. What he said there was essentially intent. He knows when he's going to be more tired. He knows when he's going to be hungrier. So he set the plan in action where it sounds like he gives himself maybe a bit more calories on that day. Something that we'll oftentimes do with athletes or clients. If I'm working with a night shift nurse and she's working 3 days in a row, the third day we might increase the calories by 200 maybe, and we'll do it via increasing fiber or volume or foods that help with satiety. For oftentimes women going through their monthly cycles, they know that there's going to be times where they're going to be hungrier. Identifying that obstacle is helpful because then maybe going into that week, they may increase their fiber just a little bit, fluids just a little bit. If you do too much fiber while you're having your period, from what I've been told, it's quite unpleasant. There's a lot worse cramps associated, so sometimes like preloading a little bit with a little bit of extra fluid may help. So creating plans that kind of work within your circadian rhythm, and then also monthly rhythms that serve you. And again, that's intent. And then the discipline aspect is like acknowledging that those aspects are going to happen. How do we work backward with intent while remembering motivation to keep adherence as high as we can for as long as we can. And then after, it's really hard at first. These are all psychological aspects as well as tangible aspects that we're describing. But the encouraging factor is if you can get through 4 to 8 weeks, kind of gritting your teeth at times to a bit while practicing mindfulness and thinking about these topics, habits form. And when habits form, it's like brushing your teeth. It's much more autonomous. And then or easy, subconscious. And then
Yeah.
from there, maybe you grow to like it with time, you grow to love it. And then the love of what you're doing is greater than what you're trading off. And that is called passion.
Yeah.
And that's why you see those crazy psychos in the fitness sphere that unfortunately lose touch with reality because they forget where they started. And they try to drive passion to everyone. But passion is a part that may happen to you. And I've seen it happen to many people. But the hardest part is getting started, being aware, and that's why we're here to help. If you have any questions whatsoever when it comes to nutrition, if you're in a calorie deficit and you're not losing weight and you want to talk about it, we are here to talk about it with you. We will not scold you. We will not demean you. We will love you. We will love you, like we love our wives, and I mean one wife. I don't know about Zach. And our families.
Singular.
You will be taken care of here.
Yes. If you guys are interested in nutrition coaching, go ahead and give us a call, shoot us a text, email us at info@mspgym.com, and we're here to help you.
Yeah, and then check out the RP channel because a lot of those principles, those are straight from Dr. Mike. I don't know where he got them, probably from his brilliant Russian mind. He would say that. I gotta preface that he would say Russian mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, so check them out. They're great.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Cool.